Hello, everybody. How you all going? Yeah? Good crowd. It's fantastic to see you all. My name's Bel Heaton. I am a proud member of Women's Rights Network Australia. Very proud to welcome you all here. We've got a great bunch of speakers for you today. Firstly, I think you all know there's someone who really wanted to be here. I spoke to her this morning. She had some thoughts on this very complicated issue with women's rights and the law that we're all dealing with. She wanted to share something with you just briefly to try and see if she can get it through to the wider world. Here's a message from Sal Grover, everybody.
All right, Sal says, thank you everyone for the support and for turning up to support women all around Australia. This is a summary of the speech I was planning to give. No man is a woman. You're men, deal with it. Thank you.
We've got a big lineup for you, so without further ado, we'll get on with it. And our first speaker is Sarah from the Lesbian Action Group. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm intending to be quite loud because I'm quite angry. My speech is entitled, Why Should Women Need Government Permission to Serve Women? A few hundred metres from here, in that direction, is the Sydney office of the Australian Human Rights Commission that gets more than $40 million of your money every year. I'm going to mention them 3 more times, and when I do, I actually want a loud chorus of boos. And if you could please also add in the Sophie Cunningham point, if you know what that is. Shame them. Oh, let's practice. Australian Human Rights Commission. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so for decades, women have built refuges, services, businesses, and all sorts of other enterprises to serve other women because sometimes women need female-only spaces. Today, we're told that if we want to organise on the basis of sex, we must ask permission from the Human Rights Commission. Think about that. Unelected bureaucrats over there with enormous power over our freedoms, administering the Sex Discrimination Act in ways Parliament never intended. In 2023, the Lesbian Action Group applied to hold public events exclusively for lesbians born female at a taxpayer-funded Pride Centre in Victoria on International Lesbian Day. They put our application out to a public consultation. And luckily for them, the individual submissions that came in, the majority of them were in our favour, including, and we beat them in that round, including the fact that they had a campaign organised by Equality Australia and 14 other organisations against us. We had the numbers. But the Commission didn't like that, so they wanted to refuse us, but said they would do a second round of public consultations. Well, more fool then, because 99% of the 262 submissions were in our favour. But you can guess what happened. They just ignored that and refused us the exemption anyway. Now, if women are expected to follow the rules for exemptions, you'd expect those rules to at least be correct. In April, the federal court, when we won in the federal court, found deficiencies with their 2009 exemption guidelines. Why? Because they failed to properly direct decision makers to have regard to the indivisibility and universality of human rights, to have regard to the principle that every person is free and equal in dignity and rights. Those aren't my words, they are the law. They are the duties that Parliament gave them, but they're completely missing from their 2009 guidelines. 4 months later, those deficient guidelines are still sitting on their website, and new ones won't be ready until the end of the year. Now, most women wanting to run a women's-only event, open a gym or any other kind of business, will never even have heard of the Sex Discrimination Act, let alone know that they need permission to open an organisation for women. I tell you who does know, and who doesn't want to give exemptions to women: the Australian Human Rights Commission. Today, on their own website, which you can all go and look at, go to their exemptions page, and this is what you'll find. You'll find 3 categories of exemptions. 2 are in progress. Ones that are meant to be live, there are 0. And then there's a list of turned down or expired. We're proudly at the top of the turned down list, by the way. Now, their president, Hugh de Kretser, said recently that exemptions are possible for things like women-only refuges. This is when he was asked at a public forum recently. If you go to their website, you will find 2 applications in progress. They are both for women's refuges. One is for an Aboriginal and Torres Islander straight woman's DV refuge, and the other one is Mary's Services. Neither of them have been finalised, both submitted in 2025, and the second one I just named went out to a public consultation that closed in March. They are asking the public whether women fleeing domestic violence needing crisis accommodation can have it. They are asking the public for consultation on that topic. It's unconscionable, and every Australian should be outraged, including our Prime Minister. Anna Caddy said at one of her fabulous appearances at Senate Estimates, "My role is to advocate for gender equality and also for the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community." Yet, during her tenure, the Commission has defended the 2023 decision refusing her application for lesbian-only public events. So we have a married heterosexual woman who is a mother who has said at Senate Estimates that she doesn't understand the term biological male, who says she advocates for lesbians, while the Commission she spent years working at defending a decision that stops lesbians holding events exclusively for women like us. And for the record, despite her claims to the contrary at Senate Estimates, Anna Caddy and that Commission did go after LAG for court costs. And if we had won, we would have been bankrupt. A small not-for-profit group of women that exists for the well-being of lesbians would have been bankrupted by a $40 million a year government organisation. So Anna Caddy doesn't advocate for lesbians, but we all know who she does advocate for, don't we? The AHRC are in no way advancing LGB rights. It's quite the opposite. But this isn't just about lesbians, it's about all Australians. Government agencies should administer the law, not reimagine it to how they'd like it to be, not ignore Parliament's directions or become ideological campaigners. We need far greater scrutiny over the AHRC, from Parliament, journalists and the public. An institution with this much power must be properly transparent and accountable. So leave here today asking one question: who is watching this watchdog? We are now. So demand transparency, demand accountability, demand change, demand that the next Sex Discrimination Commissioner understands the term biological sex, and demand that Parliament fix the Sex Discrimination Act, because women should not need government permission, or their permission, to serve other women. And finally, if you could just read the back of my shirt with me as I turn around, just to send a final message to them over there, because men can't be lesbians.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the Lesbian Action Group. We are all with you. Another extremely brave woman to introduce you to. She's the director of Binary Australia, Kirralee Smith.
Thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I'll apologise right now that I do have to leave straight away. I'm so sorry. But, you know, because this fight isn't about me or just even the LAG, like the Lesbian Action Group, or Sal Grover or Jasmine Sussex. This is about all of us, every single one of us. And it's just so wonderful to have you here, so thank you. How bizarre that we have to attend a rally to say that angry men in dresses are not women. Like, it's just so crazy, isn't it? For those of you that might have missed it, I just want to read out what I think is an extreme message of violence, incitement to violence and hate that was sent to me 2 weeks ago when I was sitting in hospital after I fell over. And it was from a person called Riles. It said, "We're going to put a bullet in your effing head for bringing men to a soccer player's game," which I never did, by the way. Do not believe what you read in the ABC or The Guardian. Not true. This person says, "One turf, one bullet. You will suffer immense physical anguish for putting our side in harm's way. F your Christian nationalism," then some incantations of the devil that I'm not going to repeat. "So happy you lost 100,000, but it's not effing enough. We will ruin your life as much as humanly possible. We will never stop pursuing your suffering. And trans people are going effing nowhere, you subhuman filth. We will haunt you as long as you live. You will never be safe. Trans people are all over the world too, and thanks to the internet, also connected. We know what you look like, in other words, on effing sight." A couple of days later, they sent me the photo of Sal, where she was talking about my case and said one turf, one bullet. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, and you may already know, is, I don't know, in a normal person's mind, I think that's a pretty violent threat. I would think that's a pretty disgusting death threat. But I'm the one under a 2-year apprehension of violence order, because for a person I've never met, never named, never harassed, never targeted, taking an image off the public domain and saying, "Why is a bloke in a frock winning an award in women's sport?" I've also been ordered to pay $95,000 in damages to 2 men in women's sport because it hurt their feelings to be identified, even though, again, it was from the public domain, there was no targeted. It was to show the woeful policy failure of Football Australia. Well, I've been fighting this in court for 3.5 years now, and our media, legacy media, are too afraid to report on this mostly, thanks to Sky that have now started, and a little bit in the Australian. But this is where the real thanks goes to all of you for sharing these stories, for educating other Australians of what's really happening. You know, I walked into the police station. I'm so thrilled these police are here today to protect us from angry men in dresses, because we do need their protection and we do need them to keep those angry men away from us, because we are not the threat. We are being gaslit, intimidated, harassed and threatened every day, online and in person, for knowing what is true, for knowing what is right, and for having the guts just to stand up here and say it. And I'm sure like you, am resolved to do this until reality is reflected in law once again. Men are not women, humans cannot change sex, and women deserve sex-based spaces, services and sport. Thank you.
Now, coming up next, we've got someone else who has bravely waded into this debate. He's the Professor of Public Ethics at Charles University. Clive Hamilton, everybody.
I'm happy to be here today with all of these brave women, and I want to talk today about free speech in Australia in the gender debate. We Australians typically are a pretty tolerant bunch. We're fine with other people living their lives in all kinds of ways that might be quirky or niche, and we shrug and typically let them get on with it. Until that is, they infringe on our own rights or demand that we must change how we speak and act to conform to their beliefs. Gender ideology is the politics of the 1%. It demands compliance from the 99%. It's captured our institutions, and individuals who do not conform are punished, sometimes harshly, as we've heard and will hear. As you know, Sal Grover was fined for refusing entry of a biological man into her women's only chat group. But her penalty was increased because she referred in court to Roxanne Tickle as he and him. The judges insisted that she must act out gender ideology against her deepest held beliefs. Dr. Andrew Amos, a psychiatrist at James Cook University, was suspended from the College of Psychiatrists because he expressed clinical reservations about gender-affirming care for adolescents. So now, doctors across Australia who follow the evidence risk losing their jobs. At Melbourne University, the feminist philosopher Holly Lawford Smith had to have her own security guards on campus to protect her from repeated threats by trans activists. She was denounced, vilified and threatened with violence, all aimed at cancelling her lectures. The E-Safety Commissioner took a sledgehammer to an acorn when she issued a takedown order against breastfeeding counsellor Jasmine Sussex, from whom we'll hear. And what was Jasmine's crime? She said that biological male transgender women cannot breastfeed because breastfeeding is a female maternal function. Hello? And in Tasmania, public libraries across the state have banned the gender-critical group Women Speak Tasmania from holding events to discuss puberty blockers and gender medicine. So we are in Australia in the midst of a great silencing. Critics of gender ideology, or those who simply want to protect the hard-won rights of feminism and gay activism, are now subject to legal sanction, loss of employment, bans from public facilities, deplatforming, institutional discipline, reputational damage, campus intimidation, online slander and threats, and even physical attack. Just think how much institutional machinery and bureaucratic energy has been mobilised to stop people saying something that in every culture for millennia is the most ordinary observation: men are not women. The punishment of one silences thousands, and a cloud of fear now hangs over this debate. It's no wonder that academics, journalists, doctors, public servants and everyday citizens have learned to keep their mouths shut. What frightens me most about this whole conflict is not so much that certain words and arguments are silenced, but that we are being coerced into declaring that certain falsehoods must be true. If you can make others say things they believe to be false, you've achieved something more sinister than winning an argument. You have shown who has the power to name reality. In recent times, science has been under attack on several fronts. Now, gender activists use the techniques refined by climate science deniers to suppress the material facts of biology. You don't have to agree with everything each speaker says here today. You only have to agree that voices critical of gender ideology and trans fanaticism should be heard. Because the chilling effect of free speech by concerned citizens goes against everything a liberal society is supposed to stand for. When what can be said around the kitchen table cannot be said in the office, the school, the hospital, or the university, something has gone badly wrong in democratic life. The kind of silencing and punishment that has spread across Australia creates legitimate grievances, even more so when enforced by public institutions. And these grievances are being exploited by people with malicious intent. Without courageous people willing to exercise the right to free speech, we would never have had a women's movement. We would never have had a gay liberation movement. And now we have a deformed outgrowth of those movements shutting down free speech. To protect our democracy and our right to express ourselves, we must resist, we must speak out.
Thank you, Clive. Can everybody hear me? How are we doing? Yes? Okay, great. Keep it nice and loud for you. All right. I am very, very pleased to now introduce Anna Kerr, the founder and the principal solicitor of the Feminist Legal Clinic. Come on, Anna.
Thank you. Oh, it's high. All right. Yes, Feminist Legal Clinic, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is a community legal centre based in Sydney. We actually lost our office over this issue because the City of Sydney Council feels very strongly about it. Anyhow, we're a centre which focuses on advancing women's sex-based human rights, women and girls' rights. Like Clive Hamilton and others like Drew Hutton and other people, I was a long-term member of the Greens, and I was expelled from the Greens because I spoke out about the fraudulent sex change industry and the harm it was doing to women and children. There are many speakers today, and we come from across the political spectrum. There may be many things we don't agree on, but what we do share is a common understanding that sex is a biological reality and cannot be changed. If only our Sex Discrimination Commissioner understood this very simple fact, we wouldn't have to be here. The Sex Discrimination Act is broken and it needs to be fixed so it does the job for which it was originally intended, which is to protect women and girls from discrimination, an implementation of the International Women's Treaty, CEDAW. It also operates to protect single-sex spaces and services when they are needed. However, the 2013 amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act removed the definition of man and woman, the definitions of man and woman, and introduced gender identity as a protected attribute. This has caused the concept of sex to be confused and conflated with the socially constructed concept of gender identity. Sex being a physiological reality, whereas gender identity, of course, is a fluid and socially constructed concept. So there's a very questionable constitutional basis for those amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act. However, what many people don't realise was that this was a very bipartisan effort, and both sides of politics voted for these changes. And so far, there hasn't been a very real commitment to repeal them in their entirety or effectively by either side of politics. Shame, yes. And it doesn't stop with the Commonwealth Sex Discrimination Act, because every state and territory has similar provisions, as well as laws which allow for change of sex on birth certificates and other official documents. And this is by self-declaration, and it's completely farcical. So in Victoria, you can change your sex on your birth certificate every 12 months. Now, in New South Wales, you can actually change it as often as you want, and there is no longer any need for medical evidence. And I think really the general public is quite unaware of just how crazy this has all become. So the impact of this legislation is now beginning to be reflected in court and tribunal decisions, which are increasingly perplexing. And that's why it's becoming drawn to the attention of us today. These decisions are crazy, and that is because in their attempt to implement these laws, they have had to determine that males who claim to be women are now legally to be accepted as a category of woman for every purpose. As a result, they cannot be effectively excluded from any spaces or services intended for women. So, it's impossible to change sex, as we all know, with or without surgery. It does not change your fundamental DNA, chromosomes, gametes. It just can't be done. So the limited research that is available to date indicates that men who identify as women and have taken hormones and had various interventions, they continue to behave and criminally offend like other males, at the same rate as other males. They don't suddenly start offending like women. And if anything, they're overrepresented as sex offenders within the prison system. So they haven't miraculously transformed into women in their behaviour either. And yet they are given access now legally to women's toilets and change rooms, to domestic violence refuges, to court safe rooms, and they're even placed in women's prisons. And we've now had quite a few cases, which many people are not aware of because it's not getting very much media coverage, that there's been violent males, criminals, who have been placed into women's prisons where they have sexually assaulted women. And that has happened not just once, not just twice, but there's quite a few examples now, some of them quite recent, and also some that date back decades. So this is something that the general public, I don't think, is aware of. So it's also not, of course, fair and safe for women and girls to be forced to unwittingly play sport against males. And women who protest this, like Kirralee, should not be victimised with endless litigation. The other thing is, there is nothing kind or compassionate about misleading people that it is possible to change sex. At Feminist Legal Clinic, we speak to many detransitioners, for want of a better term. These are young and vulnerable women and girls who have been fast-tracked into harmful gender-affirming hormones and surgeries. And despite what the general public is being told, this is generally done without any thorough psychiatric assessment or counselling, and I'm sure the next speaker will talk more on that. But we are now seeing cases at Feminist Legal Clinic where surgeons have conducted gender-affirming mastectomies on young women with only a GP's referral. So there's been no psychiatric assessment at all, no counselling. And I think that there's been a lot of misinformation out there about that, just how severe it is. The physical and psychological impacts are obviously devastating. Look, we're not here to hate anyone. We are here because we care about keeping people safe from the sex change industry and its cruel and exploitative medical experimentation, which turns young and vulnerable people into lifelong pharmaceutical customers. And meanwhile, we've got vilification laws and so-called conversion therapy bans, which are silencing the few ethical health professionals, people like Gillian Spencer, and other whistleblowers, and they are being silenced by these laws. So people need to be able to speak out against this industry without being sacked, sued or prosecuted, as has happened to Sal and Kirralee and Jasmine and countless others that you don't read about. And I'd like to say that the ABC and the Sydney Morning Herald must start doing their job. And they need to start reporting honestly on what is a vast global scandal which is playing out here completely unchecked in the Australian environment. Because our courts, unlike the United States Supreme Court and the United Kingdom Supreme Court, our courts have yet to make a sensible decision recognising that sex is a biological reality. And we need that. We need that now. There is nothing authentic about faking your sex, and there is nothing authentic about a movement that claims to be progressive and grassroots when it's actually an exploitative industry funded by United States billionaires. And those who've done the research have tracked the money. So surely it was not the intention for the Sex Discrimination Act to be used as a weapon to prevent women and girls from having their own safe spaces, services, sport, or to drive lesbians underground, or to facilitate sexual assaults on female inmates, or to sterilise and mutilate young and vulnerable people. This has to stop. Thank you.
Okay. There are a lot of different aspects to this debate, as you all know, and we have someone here today who can tell us about the medical side of things. We have author, psychologist, psychotherapist, Dr. Dianna Kenny. Come on, Dianna.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to speak for women and children and families. The 2013 amendments to the Australian Discrimination Act have had far-reaching effects on children and young people and their families. The SDA's conceptual framework became part of the legal environment within which schools operate. The generation raised after 2013 is different from preceding generations. A child born in 2010 was 3 when the legislation changed and is 16 today. These are the children who are streaming through my door confused about who they are. They're not sure whether they're a demi-boy, a demi-girl, asexual, aromantic, pansexual, omnisexual, transgender, demigender, and so forth. Today's adolescents are the first Australians to have spent their entire conscious childhood within a legal and institutional culture in which gender identity is formally separated from biological sex. This has affected the categories available to children for understanding themselves. I have observed youth surveys of gender identity that offers young people 46 categories of gender identity. Is there any wonder why children are confused? An adolescent experiencing discomfort with puberty, same-sex attraction, gender non-conformity, alienation from peers, body dissatisfaction, or a more diffuse uncertainty about gender identity now encounters a vocabulary: transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, gender diverse, gender expansive, gender questioning, that was far less socially available to Australian adolescents 20 years ago. Prioritising self-declared gender identity over biological sex in law and policy leads to the medicalisation of youth who might otherwise simply be gender non-conforming or coming to terms with same-sex attraction, or who have autism spectrum disorder. Rampant
Rampant social contagion among youth and public institutions is the only viable explanation for the exponential increase in transgender identifying young people in this century. Teaching gender ideology and gender identity confuses children about basic biology and social roles. There was an anecdote from an American primary school a couple of years ago where a kindergarten class performed a transgender celebration of a child who had decided he was no longer male but female. The teacher prepared the children with stories like the transgender fairy and the red crayon and I am jazz, upon which the child in question disappeared behind a screen in his male school uniform and appeared dressed as a fairy with wings and pink wand and tutu, and was introduced to the class by his new name and pronouns. This situation had very unexpected effects. Half the class went home to their parents terrified, saying, "But Mummy, I don't want to change sex. The teacher said I didn't have to decide what my sex is right now, and even if I changed, I could change back again." The parents tried to sue the school with absolutely no effect because the teacher was within her jurisdiction to teach the children 5 and 6 years old gender ideology. Gender ideology encourages young people experiencing typical adolescent awkwardness, uncertainty or distress, searching for an identity, to mistakenly believe they are transgender before understanding or realising their sexual orientation and before having had any experience of romantic or sexual attraction. The reality is that young people are growing up in a society actively navigating these incomprehensibly complex, nonsensical concepts. They are being exposed to confusing, non-scientific definitions of sex and gender, and this is having a devastating effect on young people's adolescent development. It is absolutely no wonder that children are confused. Our very own Sex Discrimination Commissioner, when asked to define a biological male, said she could not do that, and the questioner and she were speaking a different language. I have tried to speak with some of the state human rights commissioners over the past 6 or 7 years, and I walked into the office of one commissioner whose office was adorned with rainbow flags and badges and so forth, and I launched into my extremely simplified 2-syllable explanation of why gender ideology was nonsense. She stopped me halfway through and she said, "I'd like to seek a point of clarification. Could you tell me the difference between sex and gender?" We require not only the urgent reinsertion of biology, reality and logic into the Sex Discrimination Act, I call on the Education Minister to completely revise the sex education curricula in government schools. Currently, children can leave home as male and change their sex to female or vice versa at the school gates. Some schools are providing alternative school uniforms for these self-declared transgender young people, including using their preferred names and pronouns completely without parental knowledge or consent. Some parents have told me that they have only found out that this is happening at the end of the year when school reports come home in the child's preferred name. The current policy and curricula and the wider legal framework and organisations such as ACON, the Human Rights Commission and the Sex Discrimination Office are destroying children, adolescents and their families. Thank you.
We've got 2 more speakers for you, and then we're going to start to hear from some of you and what you guys think. Looking forward to that? Yes? Okay. And the next person who you are hearing from, another very brave woman who I'm sure you all know. She's out there amongst you somewhere. Here she is, Jasmine Sussex, everybody.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me in your beautiful city of Sydney. I'm from Melbourne, don't hold that against me. But I did want to say an acknowledgement of the Indigenous people of this land, the Giggle people, because I am from Melbourne. And I love to acknowledge all the mothers, aunties, nanas, grannies, sisters, and baby girl daughters who have birthed on this country since time began and will as time continues. So thanks to the Sydney Women's Rights Network Australia women for organising this, and the best part about this has been meeting Sofia, who I'll call Soccer Sofia, there you are, and your awesome dad and your extended family. And I have a 21-year-old daughter, and if I didn't, I would be adopting you. So thank you so much for your brilliant work in saying no thank you to those crazy men in the crazy New South Wales football team. And we'll be hearing from Sofia later, so you can all look forward to that, and I'll stop talking so she can get here sooner. So I probably shouldn't say this, and I'm going to upset some lovely men in the audience, but I am being stalked by a man who says he's a mother, and he claims in legal documents that he induced lactation under medical supervision and with medical knowledge. We have a bit of evidence and experience to the contrary, but I'm not supposed to call it for what it is. So my experience is that I'm being stalked. That's how I feel, but I guess I'm being legally pursued, if I was to be more precise about what's happening. So this has been going on for, sort of depends where you count from, but just the legal process, 2.5 years with this individual who's from Queensland. And I just got 3 things I want to say about the process, which in a way are things that I'm saying to myself that I wish I knew at the start of this process. So the thing about these individuals who identify as some kind of womaniness is that they escalate, and they've got quite an interesting skill set around gaslighting and a capacity to make everybody else involved in these legal processes gaslight you as well. So, so I've actually come to the conclusion that this is legal systems abuse that all of the women who are being pursued by these transsexual men are experiencing. And I'm pretty sure that really what needs to happen is that our legal systems, our politicians, our police and our magistrates and our judges need to stand with women and say that this is not okay. This is harassment. So, if I were to begin at the beginning of this process again, I wouldn't be a good girl. I wouldn't work with the best lawyers I could work with, as amazing as they are, and I'm really glad I've met them all. I would just actually refuse to participate in this legal system's abuse. And that's my next plan, that's what I'll be doing. So, yeah, I just think we need to stop participating in this harassment of women by some men who are obviously struggling with the fact that they're not women. But the problem is it's really not my fault, and I can't change reality, and it's not going to help no matter how much you try to make me bleed or try to financially ruin me or try to force me to not speak or try to force me to say particular things. It's not going to change the fact that men, unfortunately, can't be women, and they can't be mothers, and guess what? They can't breastfeed. Thanks very much.
Cathy Larkman is a retired UK police superintendent, and we have here today Jane Manroe, who's going to read a speech that she has written to you.
Hello. Great to be here, and I'm very honoured to have been asked to share Cathy's letter that she wrote to us. So Cathy has sent us huge greetings from Turf Island. She's written us a letter and I've been asked to read it. Cathy writes, "We see you. Simply by being there in Martin Place, Sydney, you're standing up for truth and the sex-based rights of women and girls now and in the future. You've made the decision to say no, to stop those rights being stripped away. Several years ago, I joined the Women's Rights Network, and through the support of that group, I found my voice. I started speaking out against the use of state power against vulnerable women, involving myself in protests and legal actions challenging police guidelines. Guidelines that allow opposite-sex strip searches and the detention of males who identify as women in women's police custody areas. In 2022, I exposed the fact that police chiefs across the UK had collaborated in concocting new guidelines allowing male officers to self-identify as women and strip search women and girls. And this was despite the fact that UK law had never allowed sex self-ID. If a female detainee objected to being strip searched by the male, she was criminalised for holding discriminatory views. This was nothing less than state-sanctioned sexual assault. After that shameful guidance came to light, the police grudgingly conceded that it was not lawful. But it didn't take them long to come up with another policy. This one requiring female police officers to consent to strip searching trans-identifying males if they demanded it. Can anyone see a problem with that? I worked to support a High Court action for judicial review of this new guidance. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful. The High Court ruled that police may lawfully conduct opposite-sex strip searches of transgender detainees when all parties consent. But that word consent has obviously a different meaning to the High Court than it might have to you and I. Already, a female detective has been sacked for questioning the policy. This indicates that a female officer's consent can be compelled under threat of workplace consequences. What does that remind you of? We intend to appeal this perverse decision, so watch this space. Likewise, female prison officers in the UK can be required to strip search violent males, usually sex offenders and rapists who suddenly identify as female shortly after they are convicted and demand to be housed in a women's prison. Female prison officers in Australia face the same predicament. UK women's groups have been advocating with some success for the rights of women in prison not to be incarcerated with males. Australian women's groups are also demanding accountability for similar policies. So the fight goes on. I'm driven by the hope that no woman or girl in the future will have to look back and wonder where in history she lost her voice. On a personal note, I applaud the women who attended the Hay Book Festival in Wales, my home country, in May this year. They gave Julia Gillard a wonderful welcome. They held up a banner proclaiming Julia Gillard, destroyer of women's rights. Julia, if you're listening, Australian women have decided that your legacy is utterly shredded and they want their rights back. In Turf Island, we're standing shoulder to shoulder with all Australian women in the rights fight of our generation. Women must resist. And that's signed with best wishes, Cathy Larkman. So for many of us, the news of successes which we hear of from the UK from time to time is hugely important in helping maintain our morale and energy. But as Anna Kerr has clearly set out, the legal position of Australian women is much worse than it is in the UK, notwithstanding the unlawful actions of the police and prison services. As Anna says, and we all know, our sex-based rights were effectively obliterated in 2013 with the passing of the amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act, after official advice warning of potentially serious consequences of women's existing sex-based rights was ignored and suppressed. We are now living with the consequences. Nationwide legislation of sex self-ID has doubled down on the neutering of sex-based rights. And this is how Australian police and prison guards can be forced to perform opposite-sex strip searches, and while women in prison can be forced to share their space with vile male sex offenders, and why they have no recourse. Until the 2013 amendments are repealed, our goose, which I like to call Julia's gift, remains cooked. Just on the last note, I want to get you all to envisage the Progress Pride flag. The big baby blue and pink wedge ploughing in from the left, splitting apart the rainbow and leading ultimately to annihilation, makes no secret of their intentions.
Thank you, Jane, for reading that so well. We're about to move on to hearing from some of you guys. First, I need to thank very much the man here who's been doing our live streaming for us. This is Phil Dye. You might know him as the creator of the podcast Filtered and Marking the Role. He's also the creator of the Declaration of Biological Truth. You guys heard of that one? Anybody signed it? Yeah. And while he continues to live stream, I'm just going to quickly read something from him about the latest. The Declaration of Biological Truths campaign to force state education departments out of ACON has begun. Formal government-sponsored petitions will be in all states, beginning with Queensland and New South Wales this week. Go to the Declaration of Biological Truths website from tonight for details. So that's declarationofbiologicaltruth.au, all one word. So head over there. And now we're going to hear from some of our community voices. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bel, and thank you to all of our speakers. Can you hear me? Do you like my hat? Yeah, it's my favourite. Our first community voice, they're speaking for about 2 or 3 minutes, so bear with us. Jack has worked her whole life helping women and children escape domestic violence. She knows firsthand how imperative female-only spaces are. She's a radical lesbian feminist and known artist. Please welcome Jack Drapper.
So thank you all for coming. I think it's fantastic that so many people made an effort. Fast, better. I hate that, okay. So thank you all for coming, and I just want to acknowledge that we are meeting here on Aboriginal land, and I also want to acknowledge that lesbians have been bearing the brunt of this war against women since at least the early 90s. So, my sisters. I've spent 50 years of refuge and crisis work listening to women describe the violence that has been done to them by men. All of it was based on their sex class. Refuges are necessary to provide safety and support to women and children escaping male violence. We fought long and hard to get them, and we still don't have enough of them because we know that every day women are turned away from refuges. So I trained thousands of workers in appropriate responding to women experiencing violence and abuse when I worked for the New South Wales state-based training organisation ECAV, which is the Education Centre Against Violence, a totally captured organisation, as is our New South Wales Health Department. Mostly social workers, health and refuge workers, these workers expressed concern during the training about trans access to their services. They know that men cannot be women and that those claiming to be are taking away valuable resources meant for women and children escaping male violence. Most say they would lose their jobs or the services funding if they spoke up. Some residents are treated more special. I have seen trans-identified males housed in a women's refuge accommodation, allocated a 3-bedroom villa all for themselves for months, while women and children seeking safety were advised by our community services to sleep in their cars under the bridge at Windam. That's right. This same trans-identified male was given late-night lifts to the train station so he could do his sex work. He was taken clothes shopping by the workers and to have his nails done. I've yet to see that level of service provided for a woman resident in a women's refuge. Some workers can be queer-washed into a false sense of intersectionality by allowing men in their services. In the UK recently, a trans-identified male in a women's refuge murdered another resident, a woman who was there trying to get safety from male violence. Where is these workers' concerns for the safety of women? Most services no longer are connected to grassroots activism and they are constrained by their funding agreements. Many trans-identified men have heightened sexual behaviour due to autogynephilia, a type of sexual fetish. They have a sexual response to imagining themselves as a woman, and that poses serious risks to the vulnerable women and children staying at the refuge. Children in refuges are already traumatised and sometimes sexualised. To place them in a situation of sharing a house, bathroom and toilet with a man dressed in his idea of what a woman is criminal. And to expect the mother to provide them protection at this heightened time of trauma is totally unreasonable. My next point is about data. Including males in the category of women skews all our data. 100 men per month in New South Wales alone changed their birth certificate to say they were born female. It's all lies. We hear ridiculous statements in courts, such as, she used her penis. Counting people's gender identity instead of their sex falsely inflates the rate of female violence and masks the true rates of male violence. And it was mentioned before that trans-identified men have the same or slightly higher rates of criminal behaviour as other biological men, and particularly when that comes to sexual crimes. So accurate data on violence against women is important so we can plan, budget and implement the necessary structures, laws and services that both the victims and the perpetrators need. So as a DV worker, it's hard to avoid seeing the tactics of the trans rights activists and how similar they are to the tactics of male perpetrators of abuse, the same ones used to control women in their personal relationships. There's been a few classics mentioned today, and I think that using the court system against women is one of those typical perpetrator tactics, as are threats and intimidation, threats of suicide and threats to children. What can we do to resist this? Well, it's similar advice to that we give to women who are escaping personal violence. We want to name those perpetrators and their tactics. We want to find our true allies and know our enemies. We want to speak up if it's safe, use evidence-based research, be very clear with our language and document everything. This is a heightened time of attacks on gender-critical women, and we need to consider the risks to ourselves of being public, and we need to plan for safety, because the actions of the trans rights activists, our politicians and our courts, when they conflate and confuse the terms sex and gender, are a threat to all women. It's past time to amend the Sex Discrimination Act. Get it done, Albo.
Jack, we definitely all agree with that. Come on, let's get this done. Now, our next speaker, we are so honoured to have her here. When we first heard her speak on 2GB radio, we were just amazed. She is only 20 years old. She refused to be silent when male-born players entered into her women's soccer competition, and she is calling on other young women to also take a stand. Please welcome Sofia.
Hi everyone, my name's Sofia, I'm 20 years old and I'm here to talk to you all today about my story and how I refused to play against 5 biological males in a female soccer comp. I've been playing soccer my whole life and I started in the mixed comps when I was young, but once I started high school I joined the female comps. Because as we all know, the effects of testosterone after puberty gives boys a physical advantage over girls. And so I was playing in the all-girls comp and I joined the Women's Premier League with my local club, and there was a team that were having 5 biological males play with them. So I refused to play against them. I think my club played 2 rounds against them and my club did not forfeit. And so I refused to play. And I was iced out by my club, put on the bench, and made to feel like I was making the wrong decision for standing up for my beliefs and standing up for other girls who were made to feel like they had to accept what was going on, even though it's not fair. We all know that the effects of testosterone after puberty, male muscle mass and bone density will give biological males an advantage over females in sport. And so therefore I refuse to play against this team, and I encourage all other young girls who are being forced to play against this club to stand up, make the decision that I made. Even if your club is not forfeiting, even if your teammates are telling you it's wrong, just skip out the game and voice your opinion as to why you're skipping. Don't pull a sickie, don't say I can't make it, say why, so others follow your lead. I haven't prepared anything today like the others because I wanted to speak from my heart. I want to encourage all the young females who who are dealing with this situation like myself to do the same. I want to thank Ben and 2GB, Ben Fordham, for giving me the opportunity to voice my story. I'm very, very grateful to have met Ben and all the other people that have come along with this. Jasmine Sussex, Kirralee, Sal Grover, I haven't met her, but I would have loved to meet her today. We all stand with her. And I appreciate all of you coming out here, giving me the chance to speak, because we need to put pressure on the association. Northwestern Sydney Football should be held accountable for allowing this to happen. Shame on the association. Shame on Football Australia. Shame on all of those who are standing for this, not making a change, not standing up for their beliefs and accepting this madness in today's society. Thank you, guys.
How impressive is that? 20 years old. We need more young women like Sofia, we really do. Thank you, Sofia. Our next speaker is a UK general practitioner with expertise in medical ethics and a strong focus on evidence-based practice and patient safeguarding. She is co-founder of Biology in Medicine, a group of doctors campaigning for treatment according to biological sex and opposing the harms of cross-sex medical interventions. Please welcome Dr. Alice Hodkinson.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Alice, I'm here from the UK, and I've been here for 3 weeks, and it's been absolutely mad for somebody from the UK. I've been snorkeling in the Barrier Reef, and I've been skiing in Perthshire. This is a very amazing country. So, I'm a Turf Islander. I know the word turf comes with a bit of, some people like it, some people don't like it. But I want to bring you a message of support. Keep going, you will get there. You have to get there. No man is a woman. Obviously. So I'm a doctor, I'm a GP from England. I also talk for the Women's Rights Network in the UK about medical things, and you may have seen me on telly talking about some of these things. So my group, we've been doing the rounds in Parliament talking about some of the dreadful, devastating effects of cross-sex interventions, these hormones, these surgeries that are radical body modifications and cannot possibly be justifiably called medicine. The fact that these interventions are carried out by doctors in my profession makes me utterly ashamed of my profession. It's terrible. So the human rights legislation is really, really important, and we've been very lucky, I think, in the UK, but also we have now got some protection that woman means biological woman, thanks to the fantastic, amazing, brilliant, determined For Women Scotland group. Women, you have the power. And we're also very fortunate that, along with some the judges, we also have the UK Equality and Human Rights Commission that does actually understand the law. So it's so disappointing then in Australia that your Human Rights Commission doesn't actually know what a woman is, and that leaves women here without the protection to women's single-sex services, without maternity protection, without breastfeeding protection, without maternity leave protection, without protection from redundancy. This is just appalling, and keep going, it's got to get better. We need this, we need to be able to say that a woman is a biological woman. We need to be able to state what a woman is. Why do we need this? We need this for the right to say that men cannot breastfeed, even those that claim they are a woman, and even those that have the drug-induced moobs. You have to consider who gets benefits from a man who wants to put his nipple into a baby's mouth. And I can tell you that that is not the baby. We need the right to say that's a man, and that man playing football, soccer, can injure a woman. That has happened in the UK, in Leeds. Men playing as women have injured the women. Yeah, I didn't know that, thank you. So it's happened here too. Right, so men can injure women when they play together in sports. We have the right to say that children are not born in the wrong body, and that protecting a child from the harms, particularly the medical harms, child protection must come first. We need the right to say that amputating healthy body parts is wrong. But even when the law is fixed, that's not the end of it. You'll need to persuade them. You need to persuade them that what a woman is. And the fight goes on. And then maybe once that fight has been, you've got that far, then we can start to talk about how we need to protect vulnerable children and distressed young adults, that sex is not a choice any more than your choice of your skin colour, your height. These are not choices, this is part of you. My body is me, this is who I am. And that brings me to my final point. My group, Biology and Medicine, we wrote a report with Scene in Publishing and Transgender Trend about trans activism in publishing and children's library services. So if that's of interest to you, then have a look on our Substack, that's Biology and Medicine Substack, and it's also published on Transgender Trend. And it talks about about children's books, and particularly with what I would like to see is books like Rachel Rooney's My Body Is Me in children's schools, that shows how wonderful your body is, that and whatever it is, and look after it. So I hope that might make a difference to some of you, but the best of luck to all of you, and Turf Island is cheering you on.
Alice, she became a bit of an internet hero to us when she said the word moobs on the UK GB News, and they didn't edit it out, so we were quite happy with Alice. Thank you, Alice. Our next speaker is not only a lifelong feminist, but a reformed, three-tier, lifelong Green voter. Not anymore. She has been taking this fight to the government for years, and she has a message for them. Please welcome Gina Louise.
Hello, I don't think you will have a problem hearing me. My words are not for you. My words are for the government of Australia and of every state. In 2013, you passed some amendments that were only going to impact 1% of our population. You were warned back then of what could go wrong. You have heard today what has gone wrong. You don't get to pretend anymore that it's only 1% of people affected by that change. When honourable people make a mistake, they stand up and admit the mistake. You call yourselves our honourable members of Parliament. It is time you acted with honour
admitted your error and bloody well fixed it. She was right, we didn't have trouble hearing her at all. Well done, Gina. Our next speaker is a lifelong, there's a lot of them here, women's liberation activist and radical lesbian. She has spent decades defending the sex-based rights of women and girls and what earlier generations of feminists have fought for. She is a proud signatory of the Declaration of Women's Sex-Based Rights that challenges the replacement of the biological category of sex with the concept of gender identity. Please welcome Spider Redgold.
Hello, warriors. I'm here to do a bit of context about what we lost, because what we lost was our autonomy. Every woman in 1984 and 85 and 86 had a women's caucus in their profession, in their sport, in their social life, that all of us, and everybody who didn't necessarily agree with the women's liberation movement, had the opportunity to spend time, daily, weekly, monthly, it depended on their schedule, in women-only space. And it's different. And that whole generation that our earlier speaker referenced, they've never had it. They've never had the girl gang. They've never experienced, where people like myself, we miss it, and we know the world is different because we had that constant vitamin pill of women-only space. Women-only space is a vitamin pill to us, and we don't have it anymore. That moment where, it's like taking your bra off when you go into women-only space. And don't listen to anybody who hasn't experienced it, because they don't fucking know. So that's what we've lost. We've lost our autonomous claim. This is a women's space because we say so. How did we get here? I was part of the Sappho's Party case from 2004, and we won. We could have lesbians. It was legal to say this is a lesbian-only space in 2004, and we won. It took us years, and they withheld their verdict, their tribunal statement, to the last possible day where they had changed the law before they told us we had won. This is the patriarchy. This is what we're fighting. This is what they're doing now. Sexism was what they were doing, and they're still doing it. We are fighting the patriarchy. We are not fighting confused people. However, there, it says repeal, and somewhere over here it says fix. How do we get to the future we want? This is not a party political issue. There are right-wingers, there are fundos, there are left-wingers, and they agree with us. This has to be a parliamentary conscience vote with all the parties. Every single one of us, go and find the rational voices in your party. They can do it. They could do it with the first sitting of Parliament. Conscience vote will win. 99% of the submissions to the Human Rights Commission supported single-sex spaces as required. We do not need permission. We are half the voters. Non-partisan, conscious vote. Don't say fix it. They'll have a committee, and they'll have another non-binding referendum, and they'll do this and they'll do that, and they'll still come up with, just repeal it. Let's just repeal it and start over. That, if you want to do something from today, go and talk to a politician who's rational about it is not a culture war. It is not a party political statement. The Australian public wants it to be fixed so we can actually vote the way we want to vote rather than having to vote on who's going to save the definition of woman. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Sylvia Kinder, is a long-standing Australian feminist and lesbian activist from the Adelaide Women's Liberation Movement. A teacher, my hometown, a teacher who fought for women's rights as a sex class through education reform, helping build the foundations of second-wave feminism in South Australia. Sylvia is speaking on behalf of the Coalition of Activists Lesbian Australia, an organisation to combat discrimination against lesbians. Welcome, Sylvia.
Welcome everybody, and it's been so invigorating and given me heaps of hope. Anyway, I'm never going to stop fighting, I can't. Right, so the Coalition of Activist Lesbians was formed in 1993, and we got our accreditation with United Nations as the first lesbian NGO. And we went to Beijing, and at Beijing we joined what was there, and not particularly wanted by the Chinese government, but in the NGO area of 30,000 women who were all in their own tent. We had a huge, massive tent, a woman's space. We talked, we debated. So that's also adding to what we've lost. That's another thing we've lost. We're having trouble with the United Nations about what is a woman, so don't think it's just Australia. It's all these other countries as well. However, as Coalies, we work with lots of other women's groups. Thank goodness. It looks like the women's liberation movement's back. I miss it so much because of its commitment, and the young women that were in it did all this work over the years. I've been around fighting nearly 50 years for women's rights, and it seems like we're going backwards. I'm really shocked to hear some of the horrible things that have been said online about women and the terrorist threats that they've had to endure. It's terrorism. It's not just a bit of stalking. Sorry. If you threaten people, if you threaten somebody's identity and their beliefs, that's exactly what those shooters did in Bondi. I'm sorry, but that has to be dealt with. Women have died regularly. Women are killed all the time for resisting certain types of behaviour from men, by moving away from abusive men, and they also kill children. So we have to stop all this hatred to women, because that's what's been causing all this misogyny from the trans activists. What I would like to say, I actually live in Sydney now. I was active in Adelaide and I was active in Sydney, and I lived overseas for a while. And when I was in Germany, I went to a huge conference, and there were a husband and wife where the man had decided to be a woman and was lecturing us as lesbians on what it means to be a lesbian in a relationship. This is not new. That was in the 90s. Now, the things that are in danger in my life, I run a older women's bush group. I run events and organisations with other women for those older lesbians. who want to be together. We actually exclude younger lesbians. We actually exclude heterosexual women, and they have never complained. Strange, isn't it? I just want to call out a big thank you to all those speakers before, because they're brave. I'm old now, I don't give a shit. But Sophie is young. She's a heroine. And there are other young women out there also fighting. Keep going. And just as a small thing, I actually played in the first lesbian soccer team in Australia called Armpits in South Australia, and it appeared on television, if you want to have a look back, discussing them, and that's fantastic. Thank you very much for listening.
Our next speaker, we have three more. Our next speaker is one of our favourite TERFs on X. Louise Carrigg is a lifelong feminist, and along with her partner in biological and legislative facts, Juanita, they are Street Action Victoria. Thank you, Louise.
Thanks, everybody. Wow, what a brilliant turnout. Thank you very much, Sydney. So good to see everybody come. We'll keep going, won't we? Because this is so damn important for every woman and every girl and our kids, because we're not going to keep putting up with this. We need the adults to stand up, because it's our kids that are coming through all of this. They can't do it by themselves. They need the adults, they need the parents, and they need the politicians to get the damn activists out of their offices. How dare they? So, my beliefs. No one is M to F or F to M. It's impossible. Anyone who says it's possible is outing themselves as a liar. Our government defends liars and lying. The new castle of favoured folks called trans people are simply rebranded walking sex stereotypes. The pervert who 20 years ago would have been arrested is now likely a Greens candidate. The Labor Party can now be legitimately called out for supporting rape culture. Any doctor or therapist who tells a child that toys or clothing choice means confusion over their sex is a lunatic. It's 2026. We did all this stuff 40 years ago. Girls now have to allow boys into their sports teams, have them at their sleepovers, in brownies, etc. The girls don't know what it's like to have girl-only things. And there's some parent somewhere who's saying to their son, "Of course, darling, you're a girl. You should be in their groups." And the girls can't object. They've been, I don't even know what the term is, trained, groomed to step aside. Women are expected to accept the Mr. Tickles into their breastfeeding support groups. Girls must be kind, women must step aside whilst men step into our spaces. We have oh God, I didn't even finish it, but you'll be able to, I'm sure. We've indoctrinated compliant public figures, putting men's desires ahead of regular, normal women's sex-based rights that we used to have because there was a social contract. And I think the saying is, decent men stay out, so bad men stand out. And boy, do they stand out. Thank you, everybody.
Our next speaker, Anne, is another lifelong feminist. We've got many of them. And her current passion, her mission, is the restoration of women's sex-based rights and child safeguarding. This fight is not partisan, and Anne's here to tell you that. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I did propose to speak about two myths that are current, that are being pushed about the changes to the Sex Discrimination Act. And some of the previous speakers have stolen my thunder, but I'm going to go ahead with the same points anyway. So the two myths I would like to address, the first one is that this is some sort of trivial culture war that only affects a tiny percentage of the population. As we have seen today with our many excellent speakers, 50% of the Australian population is very detrimentally affected, Australia's women and girls. Now, I can add to that the male minors who are bluffed into thinking in their formative years that they can change their sex with dire consequences for their personal development. Now we add to that all of the fathers whose family life and whose peace of mind has been upturned when their child comes back from our indoctrinated schools with a severe case of the they-thems. Now we're well over 50%, and I think I'll stop there. Now, the second myth that I would like to address is the idea that in the olden days of 2013, that the potential impact of these aforementioned changes, and I'll remind you again, the removal of the definitions of man and woman and the insertion of gender identity as a protected characteristic into the Sex Discrimination Act. These two things were supposed to have absolutely no downstream consequences. All of our political representatives and their professional helpers have failed us on this subject. How could you possibly believe that? We are expected to believe that somehow top lawyers just wandered through the legislation and the changed terms of the Act just stuck to them like burrs, with entirely unforeseen consequences. It could happen to anybody, Your Honour. Now you imagine, just imagine, putting some open-ended and ill-considered clause into something really important like a trade treaty, and then turning around years later and saying, oh goodness, we didn't think it would result in that. You have got to be joking. Trade treaties are important, it would appear, but the rights of women and girls and the safeguarding of minors are mere trifles. This was done under the cover of darkness. It was never revealed to the Australian public, and many people still don't know about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Sydney, and if you believe that all of this was done by accident, by our full spectrum of political representatives, I have a harbour bridge I'd like to sell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What a great speech. Excellent. Our second to last speaker, Jane. Not her real name, she can't use her real name. She's a psychologist, and because of the grip of gender ideology that has on her profession, she has to go by Jane. She has worked in schools for a decade and private practice and has seen the impact of gender ideology on children firsthand. Please welcome Jane.
Hello, Sydney. Thank you. Yes. We are here, we are strong, we are loud, and we will be heard. My name is Jane, and I can't tell you my real name because I risk the activists in the background or who might see this reporting me to APRA, my professional regulatory body. And we've seen what happens when APRA gets involved. We've seen what happened to Dr. Gillian Spencer. We've seen what's happened to Dr. Andrew Amos. And there are, as others have said, countless people who have been exposed to the regulatory powers of APRA, with APRA being captured by gender ideology. Shame. We know that APRA is captured by gender ideology because they're part of ACON. We've just seen that come out. We know that ACON has been influencing the training of APRA regulatory officers. We know that they are rotten to the core. For an organisation that is supposed to protect the public, APRA fails. We know that gender ideology, trans activism, and all associated false beliefs have a deep impact on children, families, women, and society in general. We know that from the Cass review, from the studies from Finland and other places, that this is the emperor's new clothes. I've worked in schools, I've seen what happens firsthand. I've known of mental health professionals who work with young people to get referrals to the gender clinic without their family's knowledge. I've seen confused young people with autism, trauma, and other issues believe that trying to change their sex or believing that they're non-binary will cure their distress. I've seen all of this happen while working in a profession where I can't say anything or I risk my job. This is absurd. And the ultimate irony is I was one of those young people, deeply uncomfortable through my adolescence growing up, wondering who I was, wondering what I was. For a while there at university, I thought I was genderqueer. I was always a tomboy. I loved playing with the boys. That didn't mean I wasn't a girl. And I think to myself that if I had been a young person today in the schools that I've worked in today, how vulnerable I would have been to being a victim of gender ideology. When gender ideology is embedded into healthcare, women and children lose access to safe care. When gender ideology is embedded into our public life, women lose our single-sex spaces. When gender ideology is embedded into the law, we lose touch with reality. Men cannot be women. Puberty blockers are not reversible. No one is born in the wrong body. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. I will not comply. Thank you.
Our final speaker, before we round off with a wonderful poem read by Sylvia, is Janet Fraser. She's a mother, historian, author, and soon-to-be lawyer. She's been publicly turfing since 2015. Please welcome Janet.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. When we first started publicly turfing, we did not imagine we'd get a crowd like this. So to those of you who are new, thank you. To those of us who've been around for the long haul, thank you. I want to thank my friend Kit Kowalski, without whose ACON Exposed, we would not have the basis for a lot of the activism that we do now. So on you, Kit. You're welcome. I've been a woman for nearly half a century now. I can report from the front lines that no man will ever be me. And this morning when I was getting dressed, I put on my Tell Him He's Dreaming earrings because they seemed oddly apropos for this kind of event. So I guess I wanted to say to you that the first time a man announced that he had lady feelings and he should be put in a women's prison, they should have said to him, "Tell him he's dreaming." And so I want to say to men in women's spaces everywhere, say it with me, tell him he's dreaming. Go Sydney.
Thank you so much. To round off today, we have a poem to be read. Sylvia? Thank you.
This is my poem. This is a poem from a woman who desperately wanted to be here, has fought for years for women's rights. She's also an activist in coal. She's on our committee. Her name is Vivian, and she was too unwell to come. She spends all her time working hard and trying to find information and fighting for women and lesbians' rights. This is her poem she wanted me to read. What is a woman? His word is trans woman. 2 words. A barren scratching on a brittle legal document. Words twisted from disarranged minds and hearts, filled with desire, hatred, envy, indifference. Words to deceive themselves and others, to echo in hollow courts of justice, to punish, extract, mine and exploit. May that paper perish. Gender ID is a lie. Her word is woman, and it is written in the landscape of her body, her being. Words with long-held relational meanings. Lesbian, lover, mother, daughter, sister. Words from a pen dipped in pulsing ink, welling up from her great artesian source. To feed, nurture, and regenerate. Restore sex-based women's rights. Fix the SDA. And don't be so nice either.
Thank you to all the community voices. But we couldn't do this without everyone here. Thank you so much for showing up, for being brave. All the women that spoke today, they're just so brave. They push beyond that fear and speak to all the politicians that bloody well aren't listening. Please listen to us and fix the SDA. Thank you everyone for coming.
I'll just say really quickly, thank you to all our wonderful volunteers who got the day together. Thanks, guys. All right, everybody head off. We're going to do this thing. Thank you for coming. It's been wonderful to see you all.
And I know too much to go back and pretend, 'cause I've heard it all before and I've been down